The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
Hi, this is Vanessa Marshall. I play Hera Syndulla on Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to the Secrets of Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you always.
You're listening to the Secrets of Star Wars, episode 63.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Hey everyone, I'm Father Andrew Kinstetter, aka Father Fett, and you're listening to the Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away, including the deeper themes and meanings. Today we are discussing The Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 7, Chapter 15, The Believer. Joining me tonight on the panel is Angela Ciolana.
Hey, Father. I was absent last week and everyone else was here, and now we kind of flipped it. So
Yeah. The other three are unable to join us, and so I figure they're just resting up for the explosive season finale.
Yeah.
So
oh yeah, that's it.
That's my take on it. So, it's good to have you, and we're going to have a great discussion this evening. Before we jump into The Mandalorian, though, there is quite a bit of news that I just wanted to kind of briefly hit.
Yes.
And get your thoughts on, and we'll wait and get the others' thoughts later. But Disney announced a number of TV shows and a couple of movies that are coming out in the next few years. So I'm just going to kind of roll through them and then get your kind of general thoughts on it. They announced two TV shows that are going to be set more or less during the time frame of The Mandalorian, an Ahsoka spin-off show, and a show called Rangers of the New Republic. They mentioned the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, of course, which is in production, and it's going to be set 10 years post Revenge of the Sith. And exciting news, Hayden Christensen is going to be back as Darth Vader.
Yes.
Andor, the Casting Andor prequel show to Rogue One, is going to be sort of a spy thriller, and I think that's coming in like 2022, so that's still in the works. There's a new one called Star Wars Visions. This is going to be sort of a short episode films in kind of an anime style. Someone online referenced sort of like maybe Halo Legends, where you have little short kind of anime kind of stories. The Acolyte, this one has my attention. It's going to be set at the end of the High Republic era, and those novels that are going to deal with the High Republic era are going to debut in January, or start to come out in January. This is going to be a mystery thriller set in a galaxy of shadowy secrets and emerging dark side powers. So we'll get back to that. The Bad Batch, of course, we already knew about this one. For kind of a continuation of the Clone Wars. So that I think should be coming sooner than later, but there was no firm release date for that. Lando series, which sounds interesting. I'm hoping for Donald Glover, but he wasn't confirmed. They also announced a droid story, which would focus on R2-D2 and C-3PO alongside a new hero. And then they had two movies that are in production. First one being Rogue Squadron, which will release Christmas of 2023. This film will be about a new generation of fighter pilots as they earn their wings, according to Kennedy, risking their lives in a future era of the galaxy. And then finally, we also heard of Taika Waititi's movie. Really didn't get anything on content there other than it's likely going to be after Rogue Squadron for release, and that it's going to be fresh, unexpected, and unique.
Well, I think we could have guessed those adjectives just from the director, right?
If you've ever seen Thor Ragnarok, yes, that's totally him. So, thoughts?
Wow. Well, I mean, it's overwhelming, isn't it? And just the sheer amount of new content.
It totally reminded me of like when Marvel announced like all the various shows that were going to connect, like phase 1, 2, 3, 4. I think this might be like phase 1 of the Disney era Star Wars.
Yeah, I know.
Just kind of
I
ignore the sequel trilogy, and this is kind of their phase 1.
I need a chart, right? Just to like keep everything straight. But yeah, I mean, first of all, I love the fact that we're getting an Ahsoka series. Wow. I think people were kind of, guessing that it was going to happen because of the Rosario Dawson casting and confirmation, obviously, that we got recently. But, just knowing that we're going to get a whole series with her, and that it's going to be set in this time period of the Mandalorian is really exciting, because everyone loves Ahsoka, right? And we've been wondering, what in the world has she been doing? It's almost like Carmen Sandiego, where in the galaxy is Ahsoka Tano?
Yes.
So that is very exciting. The Rangers series, I don't know about. I mean, since I don't know anything about really the plot of it or the characters, I mean, I guess we could maybe assume Cara Dune might show up now that she's a ranger, I guess. But I don't know about having another series sort of spinning off of the Mandalorian. I kind of feel like, one would have been plenty. But that being said, I won't complain about it. It's new Star Wars. I am very excited about the Cassian Andor series. I love the sizzle reel that they showed for that series. It looks like they're already getting things ready. I was surprised to see Neil Scanlon was saying we're treating this in the creature shop just like we would with the films, and that is so neat to think about. And everybody was wearing masks, so obviously this was happening recently. All these little things that they were preparing, but it's very exciting to think about. Just learning more about him, and learning more about that time period from sort of on the ground perspective.
I'm excited that
exciting.
It's a spy thriller kind of feel.
Yes. Yeah.
So like we're gonna get like genres of film that we haven't seen in Star Wars, and
exactly.
that is exciting to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I am a little intrigued by the Visions series as well because of the anime format that they hinted at, and Dave Filoni has had a lot of background with the anime genre, and so I'm wondering if he's going to be involved with that at all, or if he's going to be influential just in the direction that the show goes in, whether artistically or storyline wise, but that's going to be really, really interesting as well. And like you said, the Acolyte, just the whole concept, it's tantalizing for those of us who are kind of like church nerds. So yeah.
I find it appealing. I mean, there's that aspect of it, but I like to get in the minds of villains because I want to know how they work. And of course, I think secretly deep down, I'm rooting for how do we redeem this character? But there's also, and maybe this is just the science fantasy kind of realm. It's also just fun, I think, to kind of follow the villains and figure out how they think and how they work and what they do. So I think the Acolyte is I suspect maybe we'll get like Darth Plagueis and kind of I mean, he would be that era. This is roughly the end of the High Republic. So yeah, I mean, so the beginnings of the Darth Sidious kind of future.
Yeah, I wonder if they saw the fans' real interest in Dark Disciple, the novel, and that sort of had that get inside the mind of the dark side part of it, of the story of the novel, and I wonder if Disney was like, maybe we can capitalize on that. And, just, of course, with, as you said, the time period is interesting. A lot of fans have been asking for this time period as well. The really geeky ones have anyway. So yeah. So it's all just really exciting and overwhelming. But, it's great that we get to pay Disney this amount of money that we're paying them and knowing that they're going to give us all these goodies. So I'm very happy.
Yeah. Because I think, all of them are heading straight to Disney Plus. Rogue Squadron would, I suspect, have a theatrical release, as would Taika Waititi's, but that's not for that's 3 years.
Yeah.
So
hopefully we've got movie theaters back up and running by that time period.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of exciting stuff there. I think I am definitely most excited for Ahsoka and the Acolyte. Were kind of my top two things that I'm excited about. The one that I was sort of expecting that didn't happen, because it did kind of pop up in the rumors, is there's not a Boba Fett spinoff.
True.
Which I guess I'm okay with it, because there's not necessarily a story there that I want told, even though I'd love more Boba Fett. Whereas Ahsoka, we want to know where Thrawn is, and we want to, follow that story, and there's story to tell. Boba Fett, I want more, but I guess I don't want it as much.
I feel like we're getting it right now with The Mandalorian, right? We're getting a lot of story that we, obviously we're hoping was going to happen or be revealed. And now we're getting a lot of Boba Fett, and who knows how long he'll be on the show.
Yeah, which, that's a good point. I was expecting him to be a one-off character, just like most every other character. We haven't seen Ahsoka back at all. I doubt we'll see her in the finale.
Yeah.
But we're guaranteed to see Boba Fett in the finale because he's part of the team. Yeah, there's some very, very exciting and awesome stuff coming our way. So listeners, definitely, if you got any opinions, let us know. We'd love to hear what you're most excited for. And of course, we will be covering all of this on the podcast. So we'll be diving into all of them. So stay tuned for all of that goodness in the next few years. Coming back to The Mandalorian, Chapter 15, The Believer. The names of these episodes are still incredibly awesome.
Yeah.
What'd you think of the episode?
Oh, it was, I loved it, obviously. I really enjoyed the character development that we got with Din, as well as I was surprised at how much I appreciated Migs Mayfeld coming back and and liking him as much as I ended up liking him at the end. And it was really interesting to sort of have the tables turned as far as, we were happy to see the TIE fighters coming in, and I feel like I've never been on that side before. So as a Star Wars fan, so there was a lot of really neat aspects to this episode.
I had to do like a bit of a self-check, like when I saw the stormtroopers, that yes and no all at the same time, and I had to like rationalize it and think about it later and think, man, if this was like just a normal sort of, you're rooting for the good guys, we would have been rooting for the pirates. Yeah, I know. It's crazy. To kind of, Rick Famuyiwa.
Famuyiwa,
he directed this and wrote it with Jon Favreau, but he did a really good job of kind of turning the tables on that, which was unexpected. I will say my biggest complaint of the episode: this was the first episode without Grogu in the entire show.
I know. Yeah. I miss that guy. But
the little green guy.
Yeah, but it makes sense, right?
Oh, totally.
Obviously, in the story. So.
Well, and I mean, it totally makes you feel for Din all the more, because just as much as we're missing Grogu, he's more so missing Grogu. Yeah.
He's the motivation for all the characters, really, on our side, as far as, who we're watching.
Yeah. So Yeah, I thought it was a good episode. It's the penultimate episodes are always a bit tricky because it's always a setup for the finale. So there's obviously we want the conclusion of the story, which is still coming, or the finale to set up season 3.
Yes.
So to jump into the episode, we start off on the Carthan Chop Fields. So this is apparently where the New Republic sends their inmates to serve their time. It's basically a junk field with old kind of Imperial equipment. You could see kind of TIE fighters there, just a junkyard that the inmates are repurposing or breaking down these old abandoned crashed vehicles. And we see Mayfeld. He's out there working, and so this droid comes and tells him that he's been reassigned to Marshal Dune's custody. And so Mayfeld hesitantly goes with Cara Dune.
Yes, and may I point out that they kept repeating his prisoner number, 34667, right? Over and over again. So I was like, dude, this has to be something, right? So I did some digging.
Okay.
And 34667 is the zip code of Pasco County, Florida, which I found out was originally where Walt Disney wanted Disney World to be. However, this is a very interesting story. However, the locals went to court over the eminent domain situation because they didn't want to lose their land to Disney World. And the locals were actually led by a German immigrant who was a dissenter of the Nazi regime. And in court, he passionately testified that, in Germany, the government just did whatever they wanted to do and they took whatever they wanted to take. And it seems like Florida is doing the same thing. And so that was kind of like the crux or the nail in the coffin for Walt Disney World being in this zip code. So I thought that was a really interesting story.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's why they chose this number, but I just found that connection and I thought, hey, Disney World, Nazis, Star Wars, it kind of all goes together.
It does. Yeah. I wondered if there was something unique about that number too. And I didn't look into it. So that's a fascinating connection. I did look up his TK number. TK 593. That was what later on Mayfeld says is Din's TK number. I didn't find anything other than Turkish Airlines flight 593. So
yikes.
I don't know if there's anything there, but it's obviously not Turkish Air. So Mayfeld, of course, is basically forcibly reassigned to go with Cara Dune, and they head over to Slave One, and we get our first view of Boba Fett in his cleaned up and repainted armor, which was
very
awesome.
Exciting.
I've seen some chatter online of people a bit grumpy about him being all cleaned up because they liked his Return of his original trilogy look, the kind of weathered look. I thought it was great. And there was a commentator online who pointed out that perhaps he cleaned it up because he was wanting to sort of clean up because Cobb Vanth had it for a while. And the scars on the armor weren't from Boba Fett if they were from Cobb. So he might have been, repainting it and refinishing it to kind of reclaim it as his own. So I thought that was a good way to kind of headcanon why he felt he needed to repaint it.
Sure.
Either way, yeah, he looked really good. And we get an encounter with Mayfeld and Din, who they haven't seen each other since Din locked him up on the prison ship. Mayfeld has
Did you go back and watch that episode after seeing this?
No, but it was on my list. It was one of my favorite episodes in season 1, and I don't know why, but it's the whole heist turned like Alien versus Predator
Right.
Which,
yeah,
I don't know why I liked it so well, but I did really like it. But it's on my list, but I didn't have time today to go back to it. Did you go back to it?
I did. Yeah, I did have some time, so I thought, why not? I wanted to see if there was any connections. And yeah, there actually were, but I'll bring them up when they're relevant. But yeah, I thought that was so funny that he was like really. Yeah, I loved Bill Burr's acting in this episode as well. I was impressed with it, and you could just see from his physical demeanor, it was like, oh my gosh, there he is.
Well, and when he sees Boba Fett, he's like, oh gosh, I thought for a second you were this other guy. Yeah. And then the other guy walks down the ramp. And of course, Mayfeld thinks that Din is there to kill him, not ask for his help, but they're there to get his help. And I loved Bill Burr's just comedic tone. You know, he's a comedian, but he would, I mean, some of the dialogue or the some of it was almost like when they were both in the Juggernaut talking, it almost felt awkward, but it was kind of a comedic awkward. And yeah, he played it really well. So they get on Slave One, and they need Mayfeld because he's a former Imperial and he knows Imperial clearances and protocol. And so they want, of course, coordinates for Moff Gideon's cruiser, and Mayfeld definitely has. If he doesn't have a history with Moff Gideon, he at least knows of Moff Gideon, because he is initially very, very against helping, and basically until they tell him that they have Grogu and they need his help, and basically Kara is like, well, what you get out of this is a better view than what you currently get. So basically, just you help, and that's all you can do. It's gonna help him just enjoy things a little bit better than in the junk field. So they need to find an internal Imperial terminal, which is the setup for the plot of the episode. They have to go to Morak, which has a secret Imperial mining hub, which Mayfeld thinks that he can get to an internal Imperial terminal to get the location of Moff Gideon's Imperial cruiser for Din.
So to refresh my memory, I went to Wikipedia and I looked up Morak, and so I didn't remember this, but apparently there's a creature in Star Wars called a Morak. But also, when I was searching off of Wikipedia, I found a Star Trek reference. So shout out to all the Trekkies out there. That Morak was a Klingon warrior who participated in a quest to find the Klingon savior.
Oh.
So I thought that was interesting because... Okay. You know, it's like Christmas time, you know, sort of Advent, you know, but also, yeah, I think I kind of see Grogu now as sort of like almost like a Jesus, infant Jesus sort of like type in a way, because he has these special powers and he's really like, you know, he's the one that, you know, Din's trying to take care of. I think we had a listener. Did we have a listener email us and say that this was kind of like, I know we had someone say that this was like Saint Christopher carrying
Jesus.
Yep. So yeah. So I guess I had that in my head too. But so when I heard about Morak and who he was in Star Trek, I thought that was kind of, I don't know, neat. I don't know if it was intentional, but cool.
Probably not, but it's a cool coincidence.
Yeah.
And then there's this refinery on Morak, and they're mining rhydonium, which has ties to other. I think it was introduced in the Clone Wars, and I don't think I've seen that specific episode, but this volatile and unstable compound is not new to the Star Wars universe. So they are going to this refinery for rhydonium, and of course there's anti-aircraft and Imperial forces protecting it, which naturally the Empire would have that. So they have to go in for a closer look and then develop a plan to infiltrate the refinery. So the plan is Mayfeld needs to get in, but there was some back and forth on who was going to go with Mayfeld, And they were very intentionally, I felt, setting up the whole notion of essentially Din is going to be the one to go with them, but how is Din going to do it, and how is he going to maintain his cover and not expose his face? So that was definitely a recurring theme, and they set it up here because first of all, it suggested that Kara go with them, but she's New Republic, and so the ISB would flag her. And for those of you who aren't aware, the ISB would be the Imperial Security Bureau. This is essentially the Empire's secret police. Agent Callus in Star Wars Rebels was an ISB officer.
Good callback.
So was Colonel Yularen, I think, in the Thrawn trilogy books. And he probably shows up in Rebels as well. But either way, think of them as the Empire Secret Service or Secret Police. Kara can't go because she would be immediately flagged by the ISB, and Fennec can't go because she's also wanted by the Empire. No surprise there. And Fett can't go because, quote, they might recognize his face, unquote, which, of course, he's a clone.
That was great.
So that face would be easily recognizable. And so Din decides that he is going to go. And so that's where they set up the whole, well, how are you going to go without your armor? And how are you going to go without showing your face? So Din sees this transport vehicle called a Juggernaut and notices that there are troopers driving it who are fully enclosed in armor. And so they decide to hijack one of those, and Din is going to steal one of the armor of one of the troopers and wear the armor. And so Mayfeld also puts on one of the armor suits because they drop into this kind of tunnel and they hijack the Juggernaut. And I think Kara has probably one of the best lines in the entire episode right here, where she's looking at Din in the Imperial Trooper outfit, the armor, and she said, "I wish I could say it looks good on you, but I'd be lying." And I was like, yep, totally agree with you there. Mandalorian armor looks so much better.
It made you nervous, right? To see, like, I guess the bag that he was carrying was like, that's all his armor. It's like, here you go, just handing it over to somebody, like, take good care of this. It was really nerve-wracking. But also what I appreciated about that scene was that Mayfeld is like, oh, this guy reeked, his gloves are still wet. And that totally just answers like what we've all been thinking, like, you know, because this is a constant thing in Star Wars where you get rid of some stormtroopers and you take their armor and you put it on, and you never really are like shown like them actually putting it on and being like, hey, this guy smelled, you know, but you know that it's got to happen, right? So I thought this was a great, very Star Wars, you know, comedy, but it also sort of addressed that ongoing theme in Star Wars.
Yeah. Well, and maybe not to get too meta here, but there's and maybe it'll go back to even what you were going to talk about too with Din's character growth. But I mean, I know this might sound cheesy, but he's letting go of his armor. I mean, in a physical sense, but also, I mean, his path here has been a removing of his armor and being more vulnerable with Grogu, but also with Kara, I mean, even with Mayfeld. I mean, he's trusting him more than he would have last season. So there's a visual and a I don't know, metaphorical level parallel going on here with that armor, because when he wears the trooper armor, he just kind of looks awkward and vulnerable.
Yeah, and he is vulnerable, which we see when he's fighting those pirates. He's not used to having cheap armor. He's used to having Beskar. And yes, I mean, oh my goodness, really the whole show, you know, we've seen piece by piece that Din has, you know, grown into the person that he's become because he's had to be more vulnerable and, you know, not really break some deals, but in a sense, like doing things that he wasn't expecting to happen. And, you know, just thinking about what we know about his backstory and his upbringing, the fact that he, you know, came from a situation that was very traumatic, that was very, it was unexpected, that his village was, I guess, destroyed. I don't know. It was definitely attacked, and he lost his family. And he was taken into this new, completely new community of people, and had to be brought up in a completely new, environment and situation and creed and everything. So you think about what this armor really means to him, and the fact that he has worn something like it for almost his entire life. And he is now just he's gotten to the point as a character where he's able to just hand it over to somebody. That says a lot.
Yeah. Well, it's because of Grogu. It's because of his relationship there, and his fatherly kind of desires and instincts to protect Grogu is what's causing him to be vulnerable and to do things that he would have never have considered before. Not immoral, but maybe, as Mayfeld kind of points out, maybe it's not exactly in line with the creed that he thought he had to adhere to, which is
also just that feeling of safety. You know, because when you come from a traumatic background, you want to be in a safe situation. You want to know what's going on. And so that's what I was kind of getting at, is like, you go from that traumatic situation into a very structured Mandalorian Children of the Watch situation where you go by the book, and he was a bounty hunter and you go by the book. And now we've caught him at a place in his story where he's not going by the book. He has to really make up things as they go, but as you're saying, it's because of who he loves, really. Yep.
And I'm sure if the dads on the show, if they were here, they would agree and concur that, as a parent, I can only imagine that, you got to just kind of make things up as you go. I don't, I've heard all the analogies of you have the book, but, no child comes with an instruction manual, and so, he's learning how to basically share his life, because if he's going to stay in the Mandalorian child of the Watch kind of way, that's a very isolated, solo sort of existence. And when he encountered Grogu in season 1, that changed everything, because he became this clan of 2. And that's tying into what goes on in this episode. In fact, he does something that I didn't expect at all. And I don't think he expected to do it at all. And yet he does it out of that love for wanting to get Grogu back. You also mentioned his traumatic origins. And I wondered, just coming up when they're passing through that village, they really make a point of Din noticing the young, I would say, young boy. I wasn't sure exactly how old he was, but I felt that he was connecting his situation to his own situation as a child when he was when his village was attacked. So they didn't really do anything with that, but I don't know, maybe I guess that would probably show at least empathy there, that he was recognizing that these villagers might have been in the same position that he was when he was a child.
Right. I think it ties into the dialogue that they have, but I guess we'll get into that in a bit.
Yeah. That's coming up here just real. Actually, that's kind of exactly where we are, because once they get into Juggernaut, Mayfeld pilots it out, and this is where some of the awkward small talk that I was talking about earlier, where Mayfeld keeps commenting on Din's helmet, and Mayfeld takes his own helmet off and basically says, I don't understand how you guys could do this, and you Mandalorians, and they keep bringing this up, and so they're foreshadowing what's coming, and of course Din is not even going to engage in that conversation.
And also, I think it was looking back, because I did watch Chapter 6, The Prisoner, where we're introduced to Mayfeld, and in rewatching that, when the whole crew is kind of first on the Razor Crest and they're talking. Mayfeld starts really teasing Mando to take his helmet off. Oh, are you a Gungan under there? You still don't want to show your face. And so I think it was very intentional that they brought that particular character of Mayfeld back into this situation where Din has to show his face, because he was the guy who was constantly going at him about wearing the helmet.
And that's a fascinating character growth there too, because Mayfield by the end of it is not the same Mayfield that we saw in season 1.
Right.
I mean, I trust that Mayfield's going to keep Din's secret. But in season 1, I would have thought, no way.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So yeah, there's some really, really good character growth going on. We have before we get to kind of some of the other more deeper philosophical conversations that they have, they drive by some juggernauts that have already been destroyed, which is a bit unnerving. And then they kind of hear that one of the juggernauts is running hot, which clues us all into the fact that Rhydonium is unstable, and so they can't go super fast, and they can't, cause it to bounce around in the back too much, otherwise it's likely to explode. So that's setting up for the drama that's coming. And then that's when they drive through that village, and Din sees the young boy and sees a reflection of himself. And then Mayfield gets into some philosophy here when he's talking about they kind of reference that village, and Mayfield makes the comment that to them it doesn't matter if they're Imperial or New Republic, they're just invaders on their land. And essentially, somewhere in the galaxy, someone is ruling and others are being ruled.
Yeah, that's very Star Wars. We've seen that dichotomy between the sort of the indigenous people, the native people, and the invaders, right? Constantly in Star Wars. I guess everyone's familiar with the Return of the Jedi, the Ewoks and, fighting against the Empire. And that was very intentional by George Lucas, to mirror the Vietnam War. And so throughout even Clone Wars, I think we've talked about this a couple of times with the theme of it going, the native people and their ways versus the invaders and whoever they are, and their ways. So, yeah, I thought that was very Star Wars, but it does also set up Mayfeld's interior struggle, I think, with his past.
Which will come to the forefront here in just a little bit. Yeah, and he basically kind of sets up that the Empire and the New Republic are more or less the same thing, because they've both ruled and they're ruling over people. And I think as a Star Wars fan, that kind of is a bit unsettling, because you want to think, well, the New Republic is the good guys and the Empire is the bad guys, and he's making the point that, ultimately, if they're just kind of, invaders and oppressors. And I think Mayfield, I don't know, there is a right way to rule and govern, and there's a wrong way to rule and govern. And of course, the Empire has no mercy and is ruthless in their pursuit of order. And that's the wrong way to rule. Whereas the New Republic, I don't quite know enough about them, but I wouldn't say that they're perfect by any means, but
sure,
they're definitely not as ruthless as the Empire. But Mayfield is just kind of stating things as he sees them, and he's a prisoner for the New Republic, so he sees them as oppressors too. Which, there's a droid with an electric shock stick kind of keeping me in line, I'd feel the same way.
Yeah, makes you think.
Yeah, but at the end he I don't think he's going to become New Republic, but he's definitely not pro-Empire.
Right.
But he also makes the point there as they're talking, he tries to compare himself to Din and says that they're both survivors, and Din gets all offended and says that no, he's not like him. And Mayfeld points out that he said that your rules start to change when you get desperate. And then he makes this really insightful comment. He says, if you, is it that you can't take off your Mandalorian helmet or you can't show your face? And he says there's a difference between the two of those. And then he says everyone has their lines that they don't cross until things get messy.
Right.
I thought that was a insightful comment. I think Din is going to have to feel out where that line is for him. And I mean, at least from my perspective, there's got to be that moral line that should never be crossed. And of course, in Star Wars, that gets a bit blurred with all the killing that goes on.
Right.
But he's pointing out to Mando that, I mean, he is crossing lines that he wouldn't have crossed before because he's desperate to save Grogu.
Yeah, I think this is sort of a conflict or a tension that any person in any kind of belief system has to encounter for themselves. What is my line? And what is the point of what I believe and what I practice, right? And I think we've been seeing how Din, he just found out that some people think that his community is a cult, like a religious zealot cult, right?
Yep.
And I'm sure that shook him. Slowly we've seen him accept Bo-Katan as a fellow Mandalorian. We've seen him accept Boba Fett as a fellow Mandalorian, and neither of them have been exactly what Din would have originally expected a Mandalorian to be, right? And so throughout these episodes, we've seen his wrestling with all of this, right? And what is it that is important to me, and why am I saying, this is the way? Like, what is the way? And we know very little. Like, we haven't really heard him like recite a creed, or, we haven't been clued in as far as exactly what the rituals and practices and so forth are for the Children of the Watch. But we kind of have an idea that he is, going through these situations with a lot of trepidation of, is it okay for me to do this? Really kind of, it's amazing how the actors are portraying, that thoughtfulness even behind the helmet. But yeah, I mean, for me, this whole conversation, it goes to anyone who has been in that kind of situation where you have to figure out, ultimately the exterior choices that we make, the exterior rituals that we go through, the different practices that we have. Ultimately, they have a point, and in Christianity, we would say that it's service of God and neighbor, right? Ultimately. And so Din is figuring that out, right?
Well, and I think I was trying to maybe figure out who the believer was, and I think it's very much Din, and I think it's Mayfeld too.
Yeah.
But I think Din's path here is totally exactly what you're saying, and it can be easily use the analogy of just a child growing up in, say, Christianity, where, as a child, I didn't understand what was going on. It was mom and dad like, okay, we're going to church on Saturday, and you're gonna do this, you're gonna kneel, you're gonna follow along in the book, and and I just did it without understanding it. I did it because I was told. But as we grow older, then we start to say, well, let's ask questions, let's learn more. St. Anselm talks about just faith seeking understanding. So Din is kind of in that, like, he's finally recognizing that there's a larger culture, a larger belief on what it means to be Mandalorian than what he initially knew. And so he's exploring that. And I think deepening that believer in himself on what a Mandalorian really is, in the same way that someone who is growing up in the Christian faith would deepen their own belief in asking those questions and seeking understanding. And it's not something that we just have to accept and shut up and that's it, we just have to follow the rules. No, like in Catholic faith, we're encouraged to ask questions and to seek a deeper understanding. And that's what's beautiful about it. That's why, there's a lot of really good parallels happening here.
So, for example, I was thinking, okay, why would the Children of the Watch have this whole thing of like keeping your helmet on, right? So I sort of went through that thought exercise, and I was thinking, well, okay, if they have these small coverts, keeping your helmet on for a lot of foundlings, maybe a lot of people in the covert may be foundlings. Perhaps it's a way to sort of create the sense of equality among the members. Like, you're not just this guy from this planet and I'm from this other planet, but we're all in this together. So creating that sense of unity, and also obviously, for safety, right? So if you have a past, or if somebody might know you or your plant, your species, whatever, to just keep your face covered and keep your secrecy, right? And so those were the kind of things that I thought as we were going through this episode of, okay, well, why would they have that? And then I kind of wanted to go in the screen and be like, hey, Din, it's okay that you're doing this.
Yeah. No, that's insightful. And taking off the helmet, I think, it doesn't make him any less of a Mandalorian, or I think that I think it just shows his growth in character at that point. So, and we'll get to that because he's not there yet. Right now, he's just gotten to the point where he's comfortable wearing a trooper helmet and he isn't willing to take it off just yet. So they have this philosophical kind of conversation, and that's when things start to get absolutely crazy. They see explosions and hear over the comms that two of the other juggernauts that were taking the Rhydonium both are destroyed. And that's when we have this very intense scene with the pirates that approach the juggernaut, and they are attempting to detonate the Rhydonium. And Din still shows some impressive fighting, even without his normal weapons and his normal armor. He begins by kind of shooting some of the pirates off the ship. And I loved Mayfeld's comment where he's yelling at Mando. He's like, "You should have left me in prison," as they're trying to get away. I was surprised by the amount of pirates that kept coming.
Yes, it was awesome. It was like a few pirates, and then they turned into like a dozen or more. They all have thermal detonators too.
They were obviously willing to die for their cause. I mean, they were fighting the oppressive empire. Of course, they're fighting Din and Mayfeld, which we know are not the empire. But from the pirates' perspective, they're attacking this oppressor, and they're willing to die for that cause.
And they know what Rhydonium can do when it's used as a weapon, so they want to get rid of it as soon as they can.
Yeah, so we have this whole fight sequence. Din runs out of ammo with his blaster. I thought it was kind of comical how it like clicks when he runs out of ammo. Like, it's a laser, it's a blaster. I didn't know it would make the clicking. Anyways, so then he goes to hand-to-hand combat, which again, he is just really good at it. I was really surprised. And of course, they kind of keep chasing him, and Din keeps throwing him off the transport, and it leads up to the final kind of sprint to the refinery where they approach the bridge. And it's a really kind of funny scene where Din, you can just tell he is exhausted, and he's fought off a bunch of pirates, and there's like I don't know, a bunch more still coming, and so like he kind of like props himself up and like kind of holds his hands out like he's gonna box him, like that's gonna do anything against a thermal detonator. And that's when the TIE fighters show up and take out the pirates, and the stormtroopers also come and take out the pirates. And where I found myself completely surprised by my thankfulness for the stormtroopers.
Your sense of relief.
But even like Mayfeld points it out, I think, as kind of a way to identify, like, with the audience, like we're cheering for the stormtroopers. So they do make it back to the hangar and into the refinery. And this was all, of course, just to get to a computer terminal. Like, yep.
And I when I had the subtitles on, I noticed that a lot of the stormtroopers were yelling "Glory to the Empire."
Yeah.
It's like, wow.
Well, and you just get that sense even later when we run into Valen Hess, like they are very much fully in line with what the Empire believes, and they fully they think the Empire is the one thing to rule them all. I mean, like, so they disembark in the hangar and they go look for a terminal, and so Mayfeld leads them to the officers' mess. But Mayfeld is unwilling to go in there because of his former commanding officer who's in there, Valen Hess.
Who, by the way, I looked him up. He was played by Richard Brake, who he's played a Russian mobster before, and he's also been in 2 movies about Stalin. So he fit this role pretty good.
Well, and I'm pretty sure both he and Pedro Pascal were in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, there's been tons of Game of Thrones actors in this series.
And I think he was a villain there too. So he plays a very, very creepy villain. In a good sense, but like I was uncomfortable anytime that he was like asking Brown Eyes to speak. Another point on his name, Valen Hess. I don't know. I guess I immediately thought of in the Legends universe, there's a character named Valen Horn, who was a Jedi in the post Return of the Jedi stories, but it was spelled the same way, pronounced differently. I doubt that there's actually a connection there, but other than it was the same kind of first name. So Mayfeld sees him, refuses to go in, adamantly refuses to go in, and this sets up the drama of, well, what's Din gonna do? Because of course he's not gonna back down at this point in the game. And he has to go in there, but the terminal has to scan their face in order to work, which was kind of interesting. I wasn't entirely buying that, because it like apparently it scanned your face, but I don't know if it like identifies you or not, because it allowed Din to access the information.
It's sort of like that spam thing you have to go through, like prove that you're not New Republic. You know, like pick all of the ladders in this.
Find all the stoplights in this picture.
Yeah. It's kind of like that.
You know, maybe that's a really good way for me to think about this, because I mean, I was wondering, like, is it just making sure that he's human? Because I know, at least in and I'm assuming it's in canon, but in the Legends books, and I'm pretty sure it's canon too, like the Emperor was just against aliens in general. So like except for maybe Thrawn, all of the persons in authority were all human. So I know he had a very anti-alien bias. So I just, my initial thought was, well, maybe it's just checking to see if he's human. But I think maybe your thought on the capture might be a little bit better. But either way, that's jumping a little bit ahead. But Din makes the decision that he has to go in there, and he has to be the one to operate the terminal because Mayfeld is not. And of course, the only way to do it is for him to take off his helmet, which is the only time since season 1 we have seen Pedro Pascal's face in this show.
I wonder if they did a deal in the contract, like once per season, you must actually be on set.
Oh,
but it was like, it's kind of shocking every time we see his face, which is, I think that's kind of part of the anticipation that we have, right? For these moments.
I mean, and I have to say that I was glad that he wasn't near death when his helmet was removed, because he actually he looked a lot better than he did when IG-11 had to take off his helmet.
Yeah.
But so he has to take off his helmet. The terminal scans his face, and he is able to locate Moff Gideon's Imperial cruiser's coordinates. put them on a data stick that he has. And then, of course, again, chaos breaks loose because Valen Hess has noticed that something is off and approaches him. And he asks him for his designation. And we have this kind of back and forth. He doesn't exactly know what to say back. And then Mayfeld finally bites the bullet and gets over his fear and comes in and kind of saves the day by pointing out, or by lying, by saying that Din is his commanding officer, and that's where he calls him TK-593, and that he himself was TK-111. Again, I don't think there's anything about those numbers that related to anything, but
I don't know.
But I did wonder how he created those numbers in his head. Like, is there a number pattern that, like, that he would recognize or not recognize? Or
I think at this point they just kind of have to go through like all the TK numbers that have been revealed in canon and sort of be like, don't pick any of these, but just kind of make up a number.
The only one that I remember is TK-421 because that was the stormtrooper in A New Hope on the Death Star.
Mm-hmm.
And he's kind of the famous one. So then Mayfeld says that they always called him Brown Eyes, which was a great name, and that apparently he lost his hearing on Tanab.
Right. Because his vessel lost pressure there.
Yeah. Which causes Valen to then practically shout at him. And tells them that they're gonna grab drinks together because he said he recognizes them as the two troopers that successfully brought the Rhydonium back into the refinery.
But we missed an Office Space reference because before when they're gonna like try to leave Valen Hess, Mayfeld is like, all right, let's go fill out those TPS reports, which is a really famous Office Space joke. So
yeah. So they sit down to have their toast, and Valen wants to toast to something, and Mayfeld again kind of steps up and takes over the conversation and wants to toast to Operation Cinder, which was quite an interesting reference.
Mm-hmm.
Operation Cinder hasn't really been in anything prominent, at least not in the TVs or the movies.
Right.
But it is basically the Galactic Empire had this plan as a means of devastating Imperial planets as a contingency plan if Emperor Palpatine died. So it was almost like I was doing a bit of background reading on it. It's appeared in I think the Battlefront 2 video games. I think it's in some of the comics. Dr. Aphra, I think it's in there.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also in the Inferno Squad, the novel written by Christie Golden. This whole contingency plan by the Emperor, which was basically his way of saying if he died, he was going to enact this plan to devastate some Imperial worlds as a way of basically punishing the Empire for not protecting him, but also sort of culling away what was wrong with the Empire, which caused it to fail, in the hopes that it would then be reborn, which is kind of that I think kind of plays out in the Aftermath trilogy, the novels, which I've kind of read and kind of haven't read, but I know it plays into that because there's some Imperial officers who end up at the Battle of Jakku, which I think happens in that third Aftermath novel. That's you see the result of the Battle of Jakku in The Force Awakens with the Star Destroyer that's on the planet. But that battle was kind of the end officially of the Empire. But there were some Imperial officers that were there that I think escaped into the unknown regions, and they became kind of the first.
The remnants of the Empire.
Yeah, and but it was from them that the First Order was born. I'm not sure why so Mayfeld is wanting to toast Operation Cinder because it would have been something to say that would have appeased a true believer of the Empire, that this is what was absolutely necessary in order to help the Empire become reborn. which is I mean, Valen is totally on board with it. Like, yeah,
which is kind of scary.
Yeah, I mean, so there were a number of planets that were devastated by this operation. One of them is Burnin Khan, which Mayfeld makes a reference to, which he was at, and that was also where Valen was at, where he was making those decisions to destroy. Yeah, I mean, Valen
makes you wonder how did he survive? Like, how did Mayfeld survive? Right?
Mm-hmm. Great question. Maybe he's like Finn and kind of defected, but. Well, I mean, that is a good question, because even in like season 1, he was former Imperial.
Right.
Maybe
so
maybe this was
definitely left the Empire.
Yeah.
But he said, I was there, you know, and from how he describes it, you could tell that he very personally, you know, obviously he ends up killing Valen Hess because he's so upset. But you know, you can tell he actually saw like whole city destroyed and all these, you know, these guys that were with me, you know, they lost their lives. And so it's like, well, how did you survive? I was wondering if they're ever going to reveal any of that story too.
It makes me wonder if that was the point where he left the Empire. I mean, because how he reacts to all of this shows that, I mean, he did not see what happened as necessary for the greater good, as Valen was like, you know, it's a small sacrifice for the greater good. Which
is very utilitarian.
Yep.
And that's
a moral
philosophy.
A code of ethics or whatever that basically says what is considered moral is that what benefits the most people is what's moral. So
right.
So if I kill one person to save 1 billion, that's considered moral because you're doing what's going to benefit the most people. Whereas in Catholic moral thought, that wouldn't be moral because you're killing a person. So yeah, and that's kind of just part and parcel of what the Empire is sort of founded on, is this: we're going to impose order, you know, for the greater good. This is also a very handy Harry Potter reference too. So this would have been more book 7, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. When you hear about Albus Dumbledore's backstory with Grindelwald, they were having a similar debate about for the greater good, and for the greater good actually became the mantra of Grindelwald. So go check those out if you're interested. But the Empire is also completely wrapped up in that, and Valen is the face for it in this episode.
And can I just say that in our Slack chat before this recording, Dom Bettinelli, the SQPN executive director, was like, so I loved that Valen Hess had a Southern accent. And I was like, I hated that because I'm from Texas, y'all. And there's a lot of stereotypes about us because of our history. And this is kind of one of them, right? That like the Confederacy still lives on, blah, blah, blah. Which, you know, I mean, I know that was essentially what was being referenced here, but also with contemporary politics being what they are, which I won't get into. But I think there was a little bit of reasoning as to why that decision was made to give him a Southern accent. So anyways, but it was a very interesting artistic choice, obviously, because in the past they've had British accents.
Yeah. I mean, he was still effectively creepy as a villain. I have to say, I mean, I think of General Hux in his specifically The Force Awakens, when he's like commanding that entire army that's very Nazi like.
Right.
That British accent there is just chilling. And I love British accents, but yeah. So either way, the Imperials here are very clearly on the wrong side. And I really appreciate it. And this goes back to Mayfeld's growth too, because Valen makes the point of, you know, well, it was a small sacrifice for the greater good. But then Mayfeld makes the point. He says it depends on who you ask. You know, was it good for them? the troopers who died, or was it good for their families? Was it good for the guys they served with? What about the civilians who died defending their homes? And those are all the absolutely essential questions to ask, and especially from a Catholic moral thought, that's exactly why it wouldn't be considered moral, is like the troopers who were killed, the harm that it caused, even if there were maybe a theoretical greater good, so to speak, that was the result. It wasn't good for those people, and therefore it's not moral. But from the Empire's perspective, it's necessary. It's for the greater good. Mm-hmm. And so I think this is showing Mayfield's thought process on, well, maybe at one point he believed that, but then he lived through this and has asked those questions and is now on the side of, no, I don't think that's right and that's true.
So going back to the title of the episode,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yep, absolutely. So Valen makes the point that they're, of course, going to outlast all of the sacrifices, that the New Republic is in complete disarray, and the Empire continues to grow stronger, kind of.
Debatable.
Yeah. He also makes the point, and this will tie in later on in the episode, but he makes the point that the Rhydonium that Mayfield himself and Din delivered mm-hmm. was going to create havoc that would make Burnin Khan pale by comparison. And I think that's exactly why Mayfield blows up the refinery by the end of the episode. So, and he says an interesting thing. And again, I think it points out the whole mantra of the Empire is he makes the point, or Valen says, everyone thinks they want freedom. What they really want is order. And when they realize that, they'll welcome us back with open arms. That's the Empire. Totally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Mayfield, of course, is not buying it anymore at all. And when Valen wants to make the toast to the Empire, that's when he shoots him and the fight begins. Which was...
Mayfeld is a great shot, by the way. He was definitely a sharpshooter because he just needed one shot per person in that room.
Yep.
It was amazing.
And it was almost comical too, because Mayfield shoots Valen and then there's it pans over to the trooper who's got this plate with a cup on it.
It's a little tray. And poor guy was just taking his lunch break.
And there's that awkward silence of nobody knows what exactly to do, and then they all start shooting. Yeah. So, and that leads to the fight to get to the roof, and then we see Fennec and Kara just be expert sharpshooters as well. Mm-hmm. Because as Din and Mayfield are ascending to the roof, they're just picking off the troopers that are trying to follow them up the roof, which was crazy. They do make it up to the roof, and Slave One swoops in, and Din and Mayfield jump aboard.
Which, by the way, does Boba just get to lie down as he's waiting, while his ship is in landing position?
Yeah.
Does he just get to chill, take a nap or something? What is up with
Can't
that?
imagine that's incredibly comfortable, but yeah, I mean, it echoes. In fact, it's going to echo episode 2, Attack of the Clones, which I am super excited about. But even in that, I remember when Obi-Wan Kenobi and Jango Fett are having their fight, and Boba Fett is in the cockpit. He has to pull himself up to look over the view screen because the cockpit is kind of, it's tilted back because it's got those wings. So yeah, I guess he just got to chill. I imagine his feet or his legs would fall asleep though, because again, that's not a comfortable position. But either way, so he shows up, and Din and Mayfield jump aboard. And that's when Mayfield takes the cycler rifle and shoots at the Rhydonium and explodes the entire refinery. That's then when the Slave One is pursued by 2 TIE fighters, and we get my favorite part of the entire episode, because we get the seismic charge, which, if I haven't mentioned this before, episode 2 is the movie that I was in. Well, it was kind of my introduction to Star Wars, so I consider it my favorite. And as a kid, we, as a family, loved the seismic charge scene in episode 2, because at that point, we had just gotten surround sound in our living room.
Ooh.
And so we would do the seismic charge and just love how it sounded in the living room. So I have fond memories of the seismic charges. So to see them come into this episode, it was, I think I literally applauded at that point. So Andrew, don't make fun of me, but if you do, that's fine. And then the kind of the post climactic part of the episode, we have Din thanking Mayfeld for helping, and Kara has changed her mind about Mayfeld because she sees that he is the one who actually destroyed the refinery, and so they do start to make the comments. Well, you know, it's too bad that Mayfeld died on that explosion on Morak, you know. And so they let Mayfeld just kind of escape off into the jungle, and the paperwork that Kara is going to do is going to claim that inmate, I forget his number,
34667, I think it is. Yes.
34667 died in the refinery explosion, which I thought was a nice way to handle his arc.
He gets a completely fresh start now.
Yeah. And I mean, there is definitely that element of redemption there. We've seen Mayfeld go from kind of not caring about anything in season 1, knowing that he's a former Imperial, to, I mean, like I said before, I don't think he's on the New Republic side, but he's definitely not pro-Empire. And he's, not brainwashed by that, and is able to, have a fresh start. So then the final scene was also really chilling, but really cool. Din sends a message to Moff Gideon, which echoes the season, chapter 7, the episode right before the season finale of season 1, where Moff Gideon says the same words to Din. Din says them back to Moff Gideon. You know, that you have something I want. You may not think you have some idea of what you're in possession. You may think you have some idea of what you are in possession of, but you do not. Soon he will be back with me, and he means more to me than you will ever know. Which was really cool, because hearing it from Din, it has a completely different feel. So especially that last line, he means more to me than you will ever know. Yeah. We know that meaning is the relationship that they have, versus in season 1, where Moff Gideon wants him, he means more to Moff Gideon as a tool, not as a person.
Yeah, I personally didn't cry watching that, but I know of some fanboys who did cry while watching it, and I totally get it. You know, like it was a very George Lucas thing, because George Lucas would always say that Star Wars is like poetry because it rhymes, right? So they very much made that rhyme here with this hologram message.
Yeah, and it felt appropriate. I like the parallels with season 1, and of course this is all now, we are just anticipating Friday to come so we can know what happens, and I'm happy and I'm sad all at the same time, because it's the season finale, which means then we're going to have almost a year before the next season, but I want to know what happens, so I'm super excited for Friday.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait.
Any other final thoughts on the episode before we wrap things up?
Well, I mean, there was so much in their dialogue. I think we could probably have a whole another half hour or something talking about it.
Yep.
But I think, one line that Mayfeld kept bringing up is, we all got to sleep at night. Which, of course, is his way of saying, like, we all have a conscience and we all have to accept the consequences of our actions and the reality of our actions, and at the end of the day. And, in a way that's a great way of putting it, at the same time, I think one of the things that he was sort of getting at, especially when he was saying, well, if you're born on Mandalore, you believe one thing. If you're born on Alderaan, you believe something else. But guess what? Neither one of them exist anymore. So he was sort of, I think, I think he was sort of, with this whole theme of the believer, Mayfeld was kind of, I think, trying to say there's no point in believing anything as far as a creed, or maybe like practicing a religion or whatever. And I think, definitely it's worth noting that, if you want to be able to sleep at night, you have to accept, what the truth is of what you've done. And ultimately, the truth is worth searching for. It has value in and of itself because it's true. And so I think as a person of faith, I would say that, definitely that is, that's why, I profess the creed that I do, is because I believe that it is true and that it brings that freedom, to be able to make the choices that I make and to make them to be able to sleep at night, quote unquote, but to be able to know that what I am doing is good, and that it is the greatest good that I can comprehend, personally, like in my limited perspective. Obviously, I mean, there's a certain truth to what he was saying. Obviously, if you're born in one area, you're brought up in their culture and their belief system. And if you're brought up in another culture, but ultimately there is a truth out there.
Right. Objective truth is the same whether or not you grew up on in North America or whether you grew up in Africa or Asia. And I think even Mayfeld, I mean, ultimately by the end of the episode implies that he recognizes that too, because of his destroying the refinery. Like, he recognizes the evil that he's trying to destroy. If it didn't matter, then he would have just kind of let it go and not care. But the fact that he does care shows that he does believe in something that is objective. So yeah, objective truth is going to be the same whether or not you grew up on Alderaan or Mandalore. But he also made an interesting comment. He said Mandalore doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. You could have really missed that, but so I
think
I don't know what that means.
They mentioned that actually in Chapter 6, The Prisoner, with Mayfeld, and I think I forget the name of the character, but it was Clancy Brown's character, the Davaronian, who says, I think Mayfeld says like, oh, well, Mandalorians are supposed to be the greatest warriors of all time. And then the Davaronian's like, well, then why are they all dead? And so, yeah, it's this idea of like, what happened to Mandalore, right?
Well, and isn't that what's sort of being referenced when they talk about, is it the purge? So we don't have anything, we haven't seen any of that, or it's only been referenced. I think Moff Gideon referenced it, but we haven't seen or know what actually took place. And it's sort of implied that the planet itself has been devastated too, but we don't really know.
I mean, we definitely know that the Empire has the ability to destroy planets, but why would they do it to Mandalore in particular?
Good questions that I imagine at some point we'll get answers to, but not today, and I would bet not even in the season finale. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm hopeful that we'll get to see Bo-Katan next week, but
ooh, that would be great.
I suspect we won't see Ahsoka, but I'm hoping for Bo-Katan. I don't know. We'll see. That is going to be it for us this evening. Also, just a reminder to you listeners out there that we have a Christmas raffle going on. I have an extra copy of the official Art of the Mandalorian Season 1 book. So if you want to be entered into that raffle, email us at starwarsbook@sqpn.com. So that's Star Wars Book Singular @sqpn.com, and include your name and the phrase "This is the way," and you will be included in our raffle that we will be drawing for that probably early to mid-January. So just keep listening and we'll announce the winner, and you'll be contacted, and we'll send you the book as a bit of an epiphany present for you. If you want in, definitely email us. that's definitely it from us this evening. And of course, listeners, we always want to know what you thought of this episode of The Mandalorian. So let us know by emailing us at sqpn.com or emailing us at starwars@sqpn.com, or you can comment on our Facebook and Twitter page to let us know what you thought. And you can find StarQuest on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia and on Twitter at SQPN. Also, of course, please be sure to share these episodes on Facebook and Twitter and retweet us and all the things to share the episode with your friends and family members and those you think that would like to listen to us and those you think may not listen to us. But, everyone that would like to listen to us, hopefully,
all are welcome.
Yeah, all are welcome. And hopefully they find us. So share the podcast to help us grow it. Also, be sure to, if you have time, to give us a review on Apple Podcasts or the Google Podcast to let us know how we're doing, and that also helps us to reach a wider audience as well. So we'd like to take a moment now to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Wars, including this week Sarah C., Michael H., Kayleigh S., Greg W., and Arlia S. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Wars and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. Of course, make sure that you're subscribed to the show, and you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, your favorite podcast player, and you can find us on YouTube. Just search for the SQPN YouTube channel, and be sure to hit the bell to receive notifications on new episodes. You can find any and all previous episodes of The Secrets of Star Wars by going to sqpn.com/Star Wars. And we will be back next week where we will be discussing the season finale of Season 2 of The Mandalorian. So that's going to be an exciting one, and you don't want to miss it. So until then, Angela Ciolana, thanks for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Star Wars.
Thank you, Father.
And I will point out that we are at 1 hour and 20 minutes, so
it was a very rich episode. Yes.
So it's great. Anyways, once again, I am Father Andrew Kinstetter. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.